Hello, I'm Josh Siegel, curator at MoMA, and I'm on the selection committee of this year's 50th edition of New Directors, and I'm thrilled to welcome you to the Q&A with Jessica Beshir, the writer, director, cinematographer, and producer of Faya Dayi. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I like to start with the very first image of a film. I always like to take the plunge by talking about how you begin things. And in this case, it's an image of a boy running or dancing in muddy water in the mist. As it happens, it's a boy who, to me, is not unlike Fred Nelson, the tap dancer. Is that his name, Fred Nelson, the tap dancer, who is the subject of your short film, The Man or He Who Dances on Wood. But it's a recurring image throughout the film. Bodies seem to move with a kind of weightlessness. They inhabit space almost as if they defy gravity, and voices are often disembodied throughout the film. For example, the spurned girl who expresses her loneliness and longing in voiceover. So I wondered if you could just say something about that first image and how it really just kind of sets the stage and the tone for the whole film.
Mm. Yeah, thank you. So to me, that first image truly expressed a lot what I felt the youth was going through at this moment in Ethiopia. It really, not just in terms of being young and being a teenager and all the uncertainties that come with that, but also within the political and social spectrum of the country and what was happening right now. I felt that, you know, him coming out of that sort of fog, it literally, to me, it really captured, you know, that uncertainty that the youth is walking with in life. That, to me, that's why I chose it as an entry to the film.
I want to get back to the image in a second because it's related to the parable, it seems to me, that you tell throughout the film, but let's get back to that in a moment. Let's talk a little bit about the practice or the tradition of chewing khat, which is obviously a tradition that dates back thousands of years in Ethiopia, and by now has gone beyond its mystical uses among Sufi Muslims. Can you say a little bit more about this? I'm specifically interested in the meaning of Merkana. And so I wanted to help the audience also understand a little bit better the context for the film.
Yeah, so Merkana is the state of high that you achieve, you know, when you chew chat, and it's almost like a state of grace in a way. Merkana means a lot of things, you know, that word also has, you know, various uses, you know, so you can say, oh, that girl is Merkana, or maybe because you're doing something out of the norm, or maybe because you're just very relaxed, or maybe because, you know, it has many uses, but literally to achieve Merkana is to achieve that state of calm, that state of grace, that state of where you feel like everything is okay.
And it's interesting, it's sort of common to many religions, that sort of transcendent state, right? We think of nirvana in Buddhism, achieving a kind of level of consciousness that is almost disembodied, as I said before, or otherworldly.
Yes, you know, it is. And also, you know, it was very important for me to bring the genesis of this plant because, you know, it would be, I couldn't imagine, you know, a film about, you know, chat that doesn't address, you know, its old, you know, its genesis and the way it came, and the mythical story that it has is beautiful, just as the birth of any medicinal plant in a sense, or maybe you have a coca leaf that now has, you know, turned into something else. But so this one also, that is the story of a genesis, and more than just telling it, I also wanted to show it, you know, and the way in which you experience it, the way in which you live, sort of that transcendence in a way, because it, first of all, it gives you a certain state of alertness, you're alert, but at the same time, you're incredibly calm. And at the same time, it allowed them to pray and do all-nighters, as in their Sufi chanting. So that is what I wanted to transmit, because that is what you sort of experience when you're there.
Well, they also have to pull all-nighters, I suppose, as workers. And I suppose that's another reason why they're, if not obliged to chew it, then at least pressured to.
Well, it's almost like a perk of the job, It's the perk. I mean, chat is expensive, and first of all, chat, there's so much irony to that plant, because the way people see it is, it's something that it's taking you away from being productive in your life. You're wasting your time. But at the same time, when you look at what's happening in front of you, most of the people that actually are employed happen to be people that are employed in the chat trade. So there's a big irony in the way that this plant manifests itself in the social fabric. It is a never-ending 24-hour job. That from the moment it harvests, it's something that I try to convey in a way through following this plant from the harvest to all the stages that it goes into until it goes to the market, and that repeats itself every single day, 24-hour day. So there's a circularity to it, and also there was a circularity as well in terms of the editing of the film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about the editing in a moment as well, because the structure is so essential to this film, the way you've structured this film, and even how you went about it, because of its kind of dreamlike quality. But just one couple last questions about khat as a medicinal property, or as a drug. I mean, we in the West often have these kind of cliched Hollywood associations with it, right? We have this idea of chewing khat, like the cocoa leaf, as you mentioned, in Colombia, or the betel leaf in Asia, that it either produces a hopped up genocidal murderer in a civil war, or a benumbed zombie. But it seems to be much more than that. And you were alluding to that just now, that it obviously doesn't necessarily occupy those two extremes, and it doesn't necessarily lead to absolute violence or absolute dissociation. And I'm wondering, let's talk about the atmosphere of the film, the tone of the film, and your attempt to evoke that experience. First of all, I wanted to know, have you tried it yourself?
Well, I have to know what I'm talking about, right?
There.
Of course I've tried it, and I have I need to understand that experience as well.
What is the experience? I mean, those of us who've never tried it.
Yeah, well, so the thing is, it's almost like peyote in a sense. It's not like any other drug per se, where you're wobbling if you're drinking too much, or this or that, or if you smoke pot, or no. This increases your sense of alertness and awareness to the 13th power, and yet at the same time it calms you. So with that, it's like lucid dreaming. You're very here. You're here 100%, and every single thing that is around you, you are present for it, And so, yeah, that is the experience, in a way. But at the same time, there is an incredible amount of nervous tranquility that it brings, And so there are stages, for example, when people first chew it, they have like this harara, or they call it harara time, which is the time when you are craving it, the craving and the market, and it's crazy and this and that. And then, that's afternoon. At 1, you can't see anyone on the streets because everyone is inside, chewing, and that's the way that's the way it works. So, so at the beginning, there is some sort of euphoria, you speak a lot, people talk about politics, religion, or whatever happened during the day. It's a social thing. It's not something that you do in your closet.
Mm.
A social experience. That's how people experience each other. And then later on, like around 4, when the thing starts to hit you, people start winding down, and it's an introspection that happens. So you go inside yourself. And when you go inside yourself, you are really talking to everything, to all your emotions. You're talking to yourself, you are planning, oh wow, I would love to, most people would love to change their lives, would love to, I'm going to build a building, or any desire or anything that you have in your mind that you haven't been able to achieve, through a lot of unemployment in this case. That's where the fantasy gets to be lived, and you live that until the end. And then you go home, you walk home, and the next day, the youth, for example, when they wake up in the morning, they're young, they're so they're so full of potential. They're looking, what to do, what can I do today to make some money, or what. And by the time noon comes, nothing has come up. So the disappointment and in which they live this, it's heartbreaking to me, because it's almost like seeing every day how your potential gets completely wasted.
Mm.
And it's almost like, at least they have each other. This is what they say. At least we have each other. We're going to sit down. We're going to chew, So, to me, the plant itself has so many meanings. Sometimes is a consolation to your soul. Sometimes it's a socialization. Sometimes it's just you want to disconnect. Sometimes it's work. It's vast, the experience, and which is impossible to do in a film. So I basically wanted to follow what I was responding to. Yeah.
I mean, it's not impossible because you pulled it off. I
But
mean, the one thing I was going to say, though, is that I have a feeling after this Q&A, everyone's going to be rushing to figure out how they can get some of this. The way you just described it.
I'll hook you up. I'll hook you up.
The paradox, though, of course, is that, the Western neurosis, of course, is that, are striving to have those kinds of experiences you're describing, right? That kind of sense of that the tangibility of life, the tangibility of the immediacy, the presentness that you're describing is something that we spend a fortune on through, at health clubs, et cetera, and various forms of therapy. And right. And it just seems to me like it's something that is the ideal for many people here. And so when you describe it as something that is a sense of loss and heartbreaking, it absolutely, I'm sure, is for these children. But paradoxically, they're experiencing something we can only dream of experiencing.
I really think so. It's almost like it's a way how, any cultural expression is it only shows the creativity, human creativity, to survive in the world. Either you're celebrating, you're mourning, however it is that you do that expression. It speaks about our creative ways of survival. In this case, I feel very much that most of these, especially the youth, like the older ones, okay, it's been part of a culture for a long time, but the youth is sort of using it as, we have nothing else to do. There's no jobs, there is nothing. So, it's almost a way of numbing yourself from the desperation. Mm-hmm. So that's when it turns into something else. And yet, that is what is happening. I spoke to some people earlier when I started to shoot this film, and everyone wanted to know, okay, where are the drug lords, for example, in this film, or where's the haste, and it was never about that. It truly was never about that. It truly was about life, and how it affects every single social fabric, starting from the farmer himself, and the economic reality. I was never interested in statistics. I feel like the images are enough to show you how big of an industry, this is. It is a legal industry, you know.
The parable I was alluding to is a continuum in the film, and in a way it's what kind of holds it together, and the way in which you reveal the story only in pieces and gradually, like, a child listening to a story or a fairy tale or a fable. And it's a parable of Maul Hayat, the water of eternal life, and the fate of these three Sufi imam. And the question I have is, I'm gonna forget people's names, the characters' names, but Kadir arrives first. He drinks the water, and he becomes daylight, as you mentioned. And then Elias comes next. He arrives next, and he only finds muddy water, and he drinks it and becomes darkness. And then the third, how do you pronounce his name?
Azur Karleni.
Azur Kaleni arrives last, only to find dust and ash, and he prays. And Allah in response creates khat and says, whoever eats khat will always remember you. Is that a blessing or a curse?
It is a blessing in that sense, because the reason why he even goes to looking for Mol Hayat is because fear enters him at his old age, and he's not understanding why he has this fear. He prays to his creator, and he's being told in a dream that he needs to go find Mol Hayat as a cure for his fear, because Mol Hayat is the water of eternal life. And so by the time he takes this journey, the reason why he finds nothing is because he was only thinking of himself, while the others were thinking for everyone in the world. But he was so blinded by fear that, fear can blind you, and that can set you into becoming very individualistic and very selfish. And that's what was happening with him. So by the time he arrived and there was no water, he understood that it was almost like a punishment. And he also understood then why fear had entered him. And fear had entered him because he realized that since he never had a wife or kids or anyone, he was afraid to be forgotten. And so he prayed, who's going to remember me? That's why I was afraid. I'm sorry, I was only thinking of myself. And his creator responds, all right, don't cry anymore. It's okay. I'll get you the chat. And whoever chooses this is going to remember you, So that's what happens, because today, if you're walking, in the walled city or anywhere, when you're about to chew, it's a ceremony, So when they do the prayer, the dua, to start the barcha, which is the chat ceremony, they invoke those names, Elias, Khadir, and Azur Karneni. And it's that repetition of names is what prompted me to ask, who are these people that we're invoking, or who are these people that are being invoked in this prayer? And that's how I learned from the Sufi moms. They told me, how I can't believe you don't know the father of Chat. It's Azur Karneni. And so then they told me the story. Yeah.
Amazing. Because I want to go back to the first image, because the boy we see in the first image, maybe I'm reading into things, but the boy we see at the beginning is running through muddy water, as if he's arrived at the muddy water. So is he an Elias character? At the end, you see him disappear into darkness.
Everything for me, one of the things that I had as an intention, in a way, as I was shooting and as I was editing, is that everything is connected. Everything is connected. So for me, Mami, this kid, Muhammad, represented so many things, from the myth. He also at some point appeared to me as Kadir. At some point, he appeared to me as Elias, who disappears into the night. And as Kadir, because he is in that, water, he's always dreaming about that water. And I wanted to bring that myth into the present. What does that signify for today? And today we have this lake, this beautiful lake that we grow up in, that is drying. There's this whole lake drying. And so and also the youth dreaming of a possibility of another life, They're thinking about, unfortunately, they're thinking about crossing the seas, Mediterranean or the Red Sea, whichever one, and so water acquired a new meaning in the present.
In the present, and obviously every creation myth, water is the essence of every creation myth, I think it's fair to say.
Yes.
Every origin myth. And the theme of darkness and light is at the heart of every creation myth. And that is a running motif of the film, it seems to me. I mean, I want to ask you a couple aesthetic questions. The decision to film in unbelievably beautiful chiaroscuro black and white, except for that one moment of the flames. Tell us about that decision.
About the flames or the black and white?
You pick
But
one, or both.
Okay, so I always saw the film in black and white, even starting from Hayat, because that short film that I made was supposed to be part of this film. So the black and white, you see in this myth, they talk about, like you said, they talk about becoming light and living forever. Kadir, Ilyas, darkness of night. All of these dichotomies in a way between fear and love, what is fear and love, what is it we're loving, afraid of. And all of those things were for me sort of like the driving principles in a way, as I was shooting and also as I was editing.
And the editing process, I mean, the structure of the film came through the editing process, or you had decided to use the parable of the myth as a kind of framing technique to kind of give it a structure to begin with? Or talk about the work you did with the editors, both the film editor, but also the sound editor or editors.
Yeah. So the parable came later, much later, like around 2018, 2019, and that I always had it in my mind, and I knew I wanted that to be part of this. I just had to find how I wanted to ground it, how I wanted to that myth to manifest, and in which form is that going to be. And once we started the editing process, we tried different things. You see how what it works, and sound was so important. Sound was so important. It's almost like it felt like driving a stick shift, and so you're going to a certain way, and then it sounds right or not, and then you have to change, and like that, it really felt like that, this editing process. So I work very closely both with my sound editors and my sound editor, and with my editors, in order to to arrive to this sort of form, to this language, in a way that was guided by instinct. It had to be very instinctual, not necessarily considering any either genres or anything. It had to be guided by this. It was a very intuitive process, and I encouraged also my editors to follow that intuition. We had many conversations, as you can imagine, about this, and so my whole thing was really tapping into that instinct.
You mentioned language, obviously film language, but there's more than one language spoken in the film. Am I correct in thinking that?
Yes.
And that's not obvious to your typical viewer. And I wondered if you could say something about your decision to translate some spoken or sung words, but not others. There's some songs that are sung that are translated and others that aren't. And there are some words that are spoken and translated and some not. So talk about that kind of decision.
Yeah. So some of the there is another song that I've gone back to translate, but there were other things that I felt didn't need translation, that just sonically and rhythmically were able to transmit something very special that that didn't need that translation. And the other one, I felt like, no, I am missing the translation here and I need to put it on. It was, the post-production was just such a quick turnaround to turn into to UCA, I mean to Sundance. There was a translation that I was missing. Yeah.
So you decided that later on, you felt that it needed it.
Oh, we didn't have time. We didn't have time. There the ones that I thought was essential are there. I feel like there is one instance in which I would like to translate. So
A song or a moment of
a song. The moments that are not translated, when people are talking, I don't know, there was something about their bodies and the way that they were enunciating things that I felt that it didn't need to.
Well, of course, it brings you into the film in some way, of course, because you're not interpreting, rather you're feeling your way through the film. I mean, there's a line in the film that seems to speak to your discussions with your editors, which is, a film, he says, after you chew the khat, that it's like a film in your mind, and once you go in, you'll never find your way out. It seems in a way to kind of evoke the experience of both making and watching the film itself.
That's I'm so happy that you caught on that. Definitely, it was really, making this film and hearing the translations of what people said in their natural environment, and my friends were saying in their natural environment without necessarily being prompted or anything like that. It was such it was such a healing experience for me, because listening to those words, it was like always sort of an experience of feeling reflected, always. And that was a relationship. I was having a relationship with the people that are in my film. I felt like I was having a relationship with the spaces, with the images that were manifesting to me. It was a relationship with the sounds. It was a relationship. It was like a love affair, for me. So yeah, it's when they started talking about the film or the cinema, it was just almost beyond. It was almost like literally commenting on the film that I'm making, you know what I mean? And that, we were together. Mommy, Muhammad and I were together in a farm. We were chilling with some farmers, friends of ours. And one of them, because I was asking, so what are you thinking? He's like, oh, I'm watching a movie. I'm a farmer. I'm never going to go anywhere from here, but right now I'm watching a movie. And so, and then mommy said it's like, I heard somewhere that when you're chewing, you're watching a movie. And it was so, that's why I was so happy to film in that cinema, inside that cinema, because that's the cinema of my childhood, the movie theater that is just so run down, but it's still there, it's still intact. And it all spoke to definitely about the practice of making a film itself. It was just like being in a place where every single thing was connected. Everything was connected. Everything was speaking to each other. It was a beautiful thing, yeah, for me.
Well, it seems like a beautiful way to finish our conversation. So thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us.
Thank you for having me.